When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9:30. Good morning and welcome to The Point on GB News with me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Dawn Newsom. Her. Hitman and her.
Yeah.
Right, coming up, we have got some very, very exciting stuff, haven't we?
We have
got Meghan.
She's not coming.
You're heartbroken. He is
Devastated.
absolutely heartbroken that Meghan
Devastated.
isn't going to be here. That's true. And I've got a really good exclusive with a conversation I once had with the late Diana about what she would make of all of this. She told me exclusively. I think she could predict a bit of this coming, to be honest with you.
Interesting. Now, Joe Biden, he's going to spend a bit more time in Ireland than he did in Northern Ireland. He's going to talk to the Irish Parliament today. We'll be keeping an eye out for any more gaps because there was a real shocker yesterday when he got his rugby team badly confused.
That was not great, was it? Meanwhile, up in Scotland, First Minister Humza Yousaf is preparing for a constitutional showdown with the UK government over his bill to allow 16-year-olds, actually they're 15 and a half, to change their gender.
He should have dumped it. It just shows he really is a Nicola Sturgeon continuity candidate. And we've got a really important exclusive on a rebellion in the Labour Party against Keir Starmer over his flip-flopping on transgender rights.
But most importantly, it's about what you think. So let us know what you think about all our talking points today by getting in touch at GBViews at gbnews.uk. But first, here is your morning news with Bethany Elsey.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Here's your headlines at 9:32. The UK economy flattened in February, showing no growth. Today's figures from the Office for National Statistics reveal a 0.4% decrease in gross domestic product from January. The service sector fell, with the effects of strikes from teachers and civil servants to blame. The ONS says a fall in gas and electricity usage due to milder weather was also responsible. But the figures do show GDP grew 0.1% in the 3 months to February. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, says this outlook was brighter than expected and that the UK is set to avoid a recession. The US President will address the Irish Parliament today as his visit continues. Joe Biden will also visit both the President of Ireland, Michael D. Higgins, and the Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar. Last night, as he arrived in County Louth, the President said it feels like coming home. Donald Trump is suing his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, for £400 million. The former US president is seeking damages after Cohen testified before the Manhattan grand jury that indicted him. Trump has accused Cohen of failing to honour attorney-client confidentiality and by profiting by spreading falsehoods about him in books and podcasts. Cohen's lawyer called the lawsuit frivolous. And Britain's largest and busiest station, London Waterloo, has been brought to a standstill due to a major signalling problem. South Western Railway is warning commuters to avoid the station with widespread disruption and a significantly reduced service. Engineers are working to fix the issue, but they say disruption is expected to last for most of the day. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn, this is GB News. Now it's back to Andrew and Dawn.
Well, finally. We were only talking about it yesterday. They had the front page of the Daily Mirror saying chaos at the coronation because of Harry and Meghan. Now we know the Duke of Sussex is going to be there. But guess what?
Just a month after you were meant to officially let people know. But, you know, doesn't matter, does it?
She's not going to be there, the Duchess of Sussex, so there will be talk of a reconciliation. But, of course, that didn't happen after the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral
but this
or
will
the
be,
Queen's.
No, this will be the first time they've actually been seen in public together. Harry with his brother and father. They haven't been seen since, have they? It's going to be a very interesting day. Right, well, Meghan, as we've just discussed, will not be there, but it is, in defence of Meghan, her son Archie's 4th birthday, so she's staying with the children.
Oh, nice. Of course, this will be the first time Harry's been seen with his family since the bombshell memoir Spare was published, the biggest-selling book for a very, very long time.
And the Netflix interview as well, 6 parts of going... They owe me an apology. He hasn't got one, though, I don't think, has he? Right, joining us this morning to discuss all of this is royal broadcaster and historian Michael Cole. Good morning, Michael. Thank you for joining us. What an amazing story.
Good morning, Dawn. Good morning, Andrew. Yes, to come or not to come, that was the question that perplexed the Prince of Montecito, troublesome as it was. And now what we've got is a split decision. And I must say, in all humility, it was exactly what I predicted on this very programme and on this very channel more than once. He is coming and she is not. And as you say, Dawn, she has the perfect cover of Prince Archie's 4th birthday party, and I'm sure she wants to give him a little California birthday party with all the trimmings, jelly beans and marshmallows and all the rest of it. It would be very, very strange if Prince Harry did not come. The coronation is the most important moment in any reign. It's very important to our constitutional monarchy, which is our very best defense against extremism and dictatorship in this country. And he will be here. And he will also be here for another reason, a rather more temporal rather than spiritual reason, that 3 days after the coronation, he's the star witness in a joint action against Mirror Group newspapers alleging phone hacking and other illegal invasions of privacy. So he will be here. He's an active litigant, so he has to be in town. But I think we've got to give full marks to our new King Charles III, because he's played it rather cleverly in all the previous coronations. And can you imagine 40 monarchs have been crowned in Westminster Abbey. King Charles is by far the oldest of them at 74. And he's tweaked the coronation service because previously all royal princes there present had to kneel and swear an oath of fealty, of loyalty. But King Charles has stopped that. And he said only this time it will be Prince William, the heir apparent, the Prince of Wales, only he will kneel. That means that other princes, including Prince Andrew, who has his own private cloud over his head, will not have to do so, and nor will Prince Harry. So that's really quite cleverly finessed, that one.
Michael, they seem to want it both their own both ways, don't they, Meghan and Harry? Because their children are a prince and princess. That was clearly a very important issue to them, and yet their mother of the prince and princess is staying away from the first coronation in this country since 1953. What's she going to tell those kids a bit later on when they see that they're not in the official coronation photographs with their cousins?
I think it's a very major thing, and you put your finger right on it. This is far more important than any single person. You know, this is a moment, a very rare moment. There have been more total solar eclipses in the last 200 years than there have been coronations. There have been seven of those. It's very important. They should be here. It's part of our history. It's part of them. They are, for goodness sake, a prince and princess of our realm. And that's important to everybody. And the 14 overseas realms of which King Charles III is king. Obviously, I would have thought that she might have, the lure of the limelight might have been too much and have drawn her here, but I'm sure there were considerations too of what sort of reception she would get. The British people are endlessly polite. They're certainly even more polite when they're in church. And I don't think there would have been much booing, but you know something, silence is a very much more powerful way of expressing disapproval, and maybe she couldn't have coped with it. As you say, they want to have it both ways, but I'm glad Prince Harry is coming. I don't believe there will be a reconciliation. There should be between two brothers, because you're going to talk about Princess Diana, and she would be so sad to see her sons, who she thought would always be there for each other, at loggerheads like this. What they should have done is, you know, met at a pub halfway between Sandringham and London, shall we say the Eagle in Cambridge, and sorted out their difficulties. To see any family bowing in public, having a street fight, is disgusting. And there are very few sights in the whole world worse than seeing two brothers at war.
Absolutely. Michael, can I just ask, I mean, this is obviously one of the most important things that will ever happen to the royals. You say they are as rare as hen's teeth, 70 years since the last one. But if Meghan can't come over for this one, and I understand the children's birthday party, I do, as Andrew just said, feel sorry for the children in this because they're not going to be in those pictures with their cousins. But do you think we will ever see Meghan in a royal public role in this country again, or is this the last we'll ever see of her in this story?
I think it's a very good point. I think what they are intent on doing is setting up an alternate court in California. We'll see how well that goes, because there is very clear signs that they're losing their popularity and people are getting bored with them. The thing about Americans is they always want the next best thing. This is the home of nostalgia. If you want to be revered for being old and established, this is the place to be. Look at all the old Hollywood stars who come over here and star in Panto and so on. America always wants the next thing. So whether their popularity will last the next few months or more years. But of course, she has her eyes set on perhaps a political career. Maybe that's the next big thing. It's difficult because when you have spent the last 2 years knocking 7 bells out of the royal family and all the other personages in it, how do you come and face them? Because Prince Harry has also said some very cruel and unfair and unkind things about Queen Camilla. Queen Camilla is going to be crowned alongside her husband. Now, how on earth is that going to go down? How do you actually reconcile that? It would actually need a Kissinger, it would need a Talleyrand, it would need a master of diplomacy to smooth this one over. I am available if they need me to do it. But,
nice try.
It will need somebody of our sort of standing to actually calm these troubled waters. And my goodness, they have been troubled.
They certainly have. Michael, thanks so much. That's Michael Cole, the Royal Broadcast and historian. It is an extraordinary story, and but at least the Meghan and Harry show will not distract from the main charge,
and I
which
think
is
that's
the coronation
so
of the
important
King
because it is
and the
about
Queen.
Charles and Camilla. And
Michael's right to make the point. He was pretty rude about Queen Camilla.
He was very rude, actually, yeah.
The Wicked Witch?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, hello?
And you couldn't... Look, every family falls out. You understand that. And this is just a family. But I would move heaven and earth not to fall out with my sister. But then again, she's not going to write a book about everything I say to her.
No, and maybe have a tape recorder in your... I mean, remember, the Queen swept the room had the room swept before the last meeting with Prince Harry.
Didn't the Queen infamously say, thank God Meghan isn't coming?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. It's horrible. Right, in any case, we do move on, though. The Scottish Government, under new leader Humza Yousaf, will challenge the UK Government's use of Section 35 of the Scotland Act.
Now, this is about the Secretary of State for Scotland, Alistair Jack, using it to stop that gender recognition reform bill, which effectively allows children as young as 15 and a half to start the process of changing their gender without consulting even doctors.
I'm struggling with this story as well this morning. It's one of those days. Right, let's get the latest from former SNP member Stuart Crawford. Good morning, Stuart. Thank you for joining us this morning. So what exactly is happening? Can you just explain what is happening with this Section 35, what Section 35 actually even is, and what it means for Scotland?
Good morning. Well, let me start by saying that such are the political developments in Scotland over the past few weeks and months. It's very difficult to keep up because every day brings a new problem for the SNP and the Scottish Government. But basically, Section 35 is contained in the Scotland Act 1998, which set up the parameters of the Scottish Parliament, and is the clause that allows Westminster to intervene if any legislation passed by the Scottish Parliament appears to contradict current UK legislation. And nobody objected to it when the Scotland Act was passed in 1998, and it's now been invoked by Alistair Jack to prevent the measures introduced and passed by the Scottish Parliament, which you've just spoken about, being implemented by preventing them getting royal assent. And the reason for that is that the Scottish Parliament has passed in the GRR bill legislation which he and Westminster argues contradicts and contravenes the Equality Act, which applies to the whole of the UK. And that's basically what the battle's all about.
This is Humza Yousaf, isn't it, Stuart, following the agenda of his predecessor as continuity candidate to Nicola Sturgeon. And it was, in my view, a major factor in her fall from power.
Yes, it's interesting that the SNP may well bring itself down not by its independence agenda, which obviously it has pursued with some vigour over the years, but by a peripheral issue, which is the GRR bill. Humza Yousaf is indeed been called the continuity candidate and appears to have all the hallmarks of someone who's not playing to his own agenda. It's almost as if someone else is still pulling the strings.
Yeah.
But the the GRR bill is deeply unpopular with the Scottish population, the Scottish electorate as a whole, and quite why he's continuing down this path almost beggars belief. I think it's more to do with confrontation with Westminster than it is to do with anything else.
Is it also a way of distracting from the huge financial problems the SNP have got? The police investigation, Peter Murrow, who was the chief executive, arrested and interviewed by the police. We still don't know where the £600,000 was spent, why he gave the secret loan to the SNP. Perhaps he's trying to distract from that.
Well, yes, I mean, all of the above. The SNP is in some turmoil, I think one could put it euphemistically, over all those issues. And in many ways, if you look through history, when a state is in turmoil, the leader of that state will invent a foreign war to bring the country together again. You could see this move by Humza Yousaf as being in that sort of context. Suffice to say, though, at this point, although we think it's highly unlikely that the challenge to the Section 35 order, which eventually will end up in the Supreme Court, will succeed. We don't know for sure, but it's a process that's going to take, well, it's certainly the rest of this year and possibly a big chunk of next before it's resolved.
I just find it astonishing that of all the battles he chooses to fight, he chooses this one. When there are as we all know, there are so many problems in Scotland.
And Stuart, he did manage to absent himself from the vote on this legislation because there are suggestions he did not want to offend his followers in his own Muslim faith.
Yes, indeed. That one of the great sort of contradictions of the SNP leadership race was that Kate Forbes was taken to task for her religious beliefs and her faith, and the fact that she said she would not have voted for the GRR bill had she been in Parliament. And yet it's quite clear that Hamza Yousaf used an excuse with a meeting with one of the consulates in Glasgow to get out of the vote so that he would not upset his particular faith. So there's lots of contradictions and lots of humbug and hypocrisy going on up here, but it changes from day to day. Who knows what tomorrow will bring?
Well, Stuart, you'll be able to tell us. That's Stuart Crawford, leading figure in the SNP. Thanks so much for joining us.
Quite an astonishing story, isn't it?
Great story.
Right, now we move on to more politics. Right, despite a healthy lead in the polls, tensions within the Labour Party are rising over Keir Starmer's stance on these very trans issues.
It's extraordinary. So GB News has got a great scoop that the LGBT wing of Labour is considering withdrawing from Pride marches this year because they say the party brand has become toxic on this issue.
Our Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, joins us here for the latest on this one. Good morning, Tom. Thank you for joining us. Good morning. Very, very controversial subject, very hot topic. So what is actually happening now with the story?
Well, I've been speaking to senior figures within LGBT Labour, the group, the official wing of the Labour Party that represents LGBT issues. They've got around 24 parliamentary supporters and have been at the forefront of many Labour Party campaigns in recent decades. Extraordinarily, this group is now considering not marching under Labour Party banners at Pride events across the country this year. And the reason they're thinking that that it would be wrong to march under the Labour Party brand is that brand has become so toxicified within the LGBT community in recent months. The reason why is there's been a number of U-turns from the leadership of the Labour Party, particularly around Gender Recognition Act reform. Only a few months ago, Sir Keir Starmer was saying that the Gender Recognition Act needs to be modernised in a similar way to the one that Nicola Sturgeon was trying to do in Scotland. Keir Starmer has now sort of U-turned on that, saying that in a leaked policy document that I've obtained, no longer is the Labour Party committed to reforming that act or modernising it, but instead the nebulous phrase "build a consensus." The issue for Labour here
sitting on the fence again.
Is exactly that. He's sitting on the fence. He's upset the LGBT activists because he's walked away from that original clear commitment. But again, the more gender-critical people are not happy with the Labour Party and haven't been for some time because of all of the statements that Labour has made. So Keir Starmer has a real risk here of standing in the middle of the road and getting hit by traffic on both sides.
And he's got a problem in Scotland, Tom, hasn't he? Because the Labour Party in Scotland, which operates independently from the Labour Party that he leads in England and Wales, in England, supported Nicola Sturgeon's changes to gender so that 15-year-olds... So he's going to be completely out odds now with the Labour Party in Scotland. The Tory party are going to do very well out of this because they're the one party that thinks this whole LGBT move is madness, which I think it is.
Well, that's assuming the Labour Party remains consistent on the issue. Of course, the Labour Party did back that final vote in the Scottish Parliament towards the end of last year. So did the Lib Dems. There were some members of those parties who voted against it, but obviously it passed with huge numbers. But when it came to the Section 35 order that Alistair Jack laid down to block this from becoming law, the Labour Party said they wouldn't oppose that Section 35 order. So they backed the reform, but also they're not opposing the stopping of the reform. Again, they're trying to be all things to all people. And the risk there, again, is that that upsets both groups, as we've started to see now with this move to not quite disaffiliation, but certainly not wanting to march under that Labour Party banner.
And because this always reminds us that he has difficulties, Keir Starmer, identifying what is a woman.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, this is, you know, as Tom was just saying, it's like damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. He's trying to please everybody all the time and just alienating everybody.
Yeah, that's not what leadership is about.
No, it's about being a leader, isn't it? But a great
Tom, great story. Well done.
Yeah.
Now, Joe Biden is continuing his tour of the Republic of Ireland. I think some people have actually turned out to see him, unlike in Northern Ireland. He's addressing the Irish Parliament before meeting the Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar.
It comes after the White House was forced to deny the president was anti-British following his brief meeting, a very brief meeting, with the Prime Minister.
So we're going to talk now to Darren McCaffrey, who is our political editor, who is over there in Ireland with the president. Darren, morning to you. Are there crowds flocking to see him?
Yeah, there's certainly much more of a turnout here, unsurprisingly, given the fact that the weather's nicer than it has been, certainly in Belfast, over the last 24 hours or so. Kind of the hard political lifting, if you like, Andrew, was yesterday with that speech at the University of Ulster, the President trying to walk that fine line, but trying to encourage Stormont and the restoration of devolution in Belfast, while at the same time not trying to annoy unionists too much, not being seen to interfere too much. This, though, however, is the main leg of his visit. As you say, he is meeting the Irish President very shortly at his residence, Aras an Uachtaráin, in the Phoenix Park here in Dublin. He's then going to be the fourth US President to address both houses of the Irish Parliament. Going to have a meeting with the Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, the Irish Prime Minister, and then a big dinner tonight at Dublin Castle. And it's fair to say, last night, after he left Belfast and he travelled to his ancestral home in County Louth, there was a much more relaxed Joe Biden. Joe Biden, who seemed much more at home, if you like, with his baseball cap on, greeting crowds, taking selfies. As I say, the politics of Northern Ireland sometimes can be quite hard. This is a much more relaxing bit of his visit. We know that President Biden regards himself very strongly as an Irish American. He wears his shamrock very heavily on his sleeve. And it's fair to say, I think he's hoping that the images from here will go down pretty well with the 30, 40 million Americans who also brand themselves as Irish Americans, particularly if he's going to stand at the next general election in the US.
Darren, can we ask you, are you on gaff watch? Because there really was a shocker yesterday in that pub when he talked about a fifth cousin who he said was in the team which flattened the Black and Tans rugby team. Whoops, he meant the All Blacks. Of course, the Black and Tans were the English soldiers put in the Royal Irish Constabulary.
Yeah, English Constabulary sorting out.
Disbanded after 2 years because of the violence against the Catholic community.
Yeah, I mean, in the country for 24 hours and did make a pretty major gaffe, as you say. We're going to be talking about the New Zealand rugby team, known as the All Blacks, ended up talking about a very controversial section of the British military during the War of Independence here in Ireland, the Black and Tans, as you say. Joe Biden is infamous for making these gaffes. Yes, we are essentially on a gaff watch.
Good.
You know, he's 80 years old, he makes these mistakes. Sometimes they're not great, are they? Let's be honest about all of that. But also be in no doubt that there's a genuine sense of affection for him here in Ireland. And I suspect we will see a lot of people on the streets welcoming the US president over the next 48 hours or so.
All right, Darren, that's Darren McCaffrey. We'll be with Darren again later in the programme. Now, still to come, the Spare returns. Harry's confirmed to be at his father's coronation, but sadly, Meghan won't be coming. Will you miss her? I won't. This is To The Point on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us four, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't Britain's wink, listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
It's 10 a.m. Good morning and welcome to The Point on GB News with me, Andrew Pearce, and Dawn Neeson.
Thank you, not her.
No.
Dawn Neeson.
You.
Right, OK. Thank you. That's even worse. Harry is coming. Meghan isn't. You're heartbroken, I know.
Devastated.
The latest will they, won't they Windsor saga is over. We have plenty of riot roll what's that thing I was saying? On the build-up to the royal coronation.
And Joe Biden, the President of the United States, he's going to address the Irish Parliament. This will cause even more tension with the unionist community. But we're going to be looking out for some more gas, because there really was a shocker when he got his rugby teams confused yesterday.
To be fair, he was in a pub, but he doesn't even drink.
Doesn't drink.
Right, meanwhile, Scotland's First Minister, Humza Yousaf, is preparing for a constitutional showdown with the UK government over his bill to allow 16-year-olds, actually 15-and-a-half-year-olds, to change their gender.
Mad, isn't it? And we've got an exclusive report on a big rebellion against Keir Starmer. It's Labour activists over his flip-flopping on transgender rights, and it's the LGBT activists who are very cross with him.
But this is not about what we think, it's about what you think. So let us know what your thoughts are on all our talking points. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, here's your morning news with Bethany Elsey.
Thank you. Good morning. It's 1 minute past 10. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. The UK economy flattened in February, showing no growth. Today's figures from the Office for National Statistics reveal a 0.4% decrease in gross domestic product from January. The service sector fell with the effects of strikes from teachers and civil servants to blame. The ONS says a fall in gas and electric usage due to milder weather was also responsible, but the figures do show GDP grew 0.1% in the 3 months to February. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, says this outlook was brighter than expected and that the UK is set to avoid a recession. US President Joe Biden will address the Irish Parliament today and meet with Taoiseach Leo Varadkar as his visit to the island of Ireland continues. Yesterday, thousands gathered to greet him on a tour of his ancestors' home county. In a speech at a pub in County Louth, he said visiting the area feels like coming home. The President will spend 3 days in the Republic of Ireland after having spent a short time in Northern Ireland to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement.
I said last time I was here, in a sense, I know why my ancestors and many of your relatives left during the famine. And, you know, when you're here, you wonder why anyone would ever want to leave. I mean it. So it's good to be back.
A 74-year-old man has been extradited from Pakistan and charged with the murder of a female police officer over 17 years ago. 38-year-old PC Sharon Bishinevitsky was shot in 2005 while responding to a robbery in Bradford. Pirandita Khan is due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court later. Police will spend less time dealing with social media spats and more time responding to crime on the streets. Under new Home Office plans, officers will only have to record social media cases if they cross the criminal threshold. The move is part of a series of measures to cut what the government has called unnecessary red tape. The National Police Chiefs Council says more than 440,000 officer hours are spent on unnecessary admin tasks. Policing Minister Chris Philp told us it's the right step forward.
The public expect the police to be catching criminals and keeping them safe, and that's what these changes are designed to help do. Nobody wants the police to be wasting time on unnecessary paperwork. Of course, you've got to keep proper records, obviously, but it's gone a bit too far, and we're tipping the balance back. And I think saving nearly 500,000 hours a year of police time is a really important step forward.
Small boat crossings have caused a sharp increase in diphtheria cases in the UK and Europe. That's according to the European Society of Clinical Microbiology and Infectious Disease. Scientists say outbreaks in the past year have been mostly linked to incoming migrants. The BMA has formally asked the government to enter talks to help end the junior doctors' pay dispute. It comes as thousands of junior doctors in England walk out for a third of 4 days of industrial action this week. Downing Street have refused to negotiate unless the BMA abandons demands of a 35% pay rise. Donald Trump is suing his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, for £400 million. The former US president is seeking damages after Cohen testified before the Manhattan grand jury that indicted him. Trump has accused Cohen of failing to honour attorney-client confidentiality and for profiting by spreading falsehoods about him in books and podcasts. Cohen's lawyer called the lawsuit frivolous. Converting homes into short-term holiday lets will require planning permission under new government plans. It's part of a crackdown on residents being pushed out of their towns. The rental site Airbnb has welcomed the move, but warned there must be the right balance between protecting housing and supporting families who let their space to make a living. Britain's largest and busiest station, London Waterloo, has been brought to a standstill amid a major signalling problem. South Western Railway is warning commuters to avoid the station with widespread disruption and a significantly reduced service. Engineers are working to restore the issue, but disruption is expected to last for most of the day. And the Royal Mint is set to release a new range of commemorative coins featuring a crowned portrait of the King for the very first time. The collection depicts King Charles III wearing the Tudor crown, which he personally chose for the portrait. A 50p and a £5 coin will be released later this month, ahead of the coronation in May. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens now. It's back to Andrew and Dawn.
Well, It is the big story,
Yeah.
and everyone's talking about it, and they are flooding in the emails,
Yes.
the tweets and texts. Jenny says, and I really think this is quite a significant message, Jenny, she says, I wish the father wasn't coming either. There's no reconciliation on the horizon. He's coming to get content for his failing brand. This is a state occasion, not family therapy.
Well, absolutely, I agree. Look, I'm pleased for King Charles that
Yeah.
Harry is going to be there, because I think it is important, and
It
I
is.
think Charles has offered more than enough olive branches,
Yeah.
to be fair. I mean, even in his first speech, he's sort of like, you know, Harry and Meghan love
Yeah.
them, they're making their own way in
Yeah.
America, etc. But there's not a lot of love in the room at the moment from the viewers, is there?
No.
I mean, Helen, good morning, Helen, thank you for getting in touch. Helen says, Harry arriving in the UK is a good thing. It will give him time to clear out his and M's personal stuff from their Windsor abode. Helen, cutting.
And John says, let's have Harry and Meghan's titles taken away. If our royalty want to continue, the sooner they dump this poisonous pair, the better. Charles needs to get real and put his whinging son into place.
Oh, yeah, not a lot. As I said, Richard, this is an interesting one, Richard. I've been thinking this as well, but that's, by the way, good morning to you. It will be interesting to see if Netflix come with him. Maybe they need more money. Yeah, look, families fall out, OK? We know that, and it's always difficult, whether you're a royal or not. But if you were William or the King or any of the royal family, you'd be terrified to say anything more than good morning to them.
In case he's taping them. Or in case there's a camera crew.
I know, you'd get another book out of just, good morning, how are you?
Yeah. I suspect Prince Harry will be in Britain for about as long as Biden was in Northern Ireland, which was 16 hours. Most of that was in bed, but as I made the point, and when he's not in bed, he's asleep on the job anyway, Biden. We are not going to see much of Harry.
No. Well, he'll be getting the eco-warrior, obviously, be getting the private jet in and out.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about this. We're going to talking about all this now is our royal commentator, Charles Ray, who Dawn and I have known for many, many years.
Yay.
Morning, Charles.
Good morning, both.
Good morning, young man.
Is this the best compromise, do you think?
This is a 50% result for Britain and the monarchy that she's not coming. I mean, he'll be here, and as you've already discussed, especially with Michael Cole, it was right for him to be here. He is the king's son, and he should be here. But this excuse that they've come up with, which is supposed to be a major factor, that she's staying behind because it's Archie's birthday. Well, we've known it's been Archie's birthday for 4 years on the May the 6th. It's not suddenly cropped up. They're not suddenly just remembered that it's his birthday. I firmly believe that she is not coming because she will not be welcome in this country and certainly won't be welcome within the royal family. You know, and people who start talking about reconciliations and, you know, chats, and there's never going to be a reconciliation. You cannot slag off the royal family and Britain as a racist, both racist organisations, and then expect everybody just to sort of say, oh, well, yeah, you probably may have a point and everything else. It's okay. No, best thing for it is to stay away. But the one thing I'd like to say about the kids is, it's a great shame that she cannot have brought the children over.
Yeah.
What a fantastic birthday present it would have been for little Archie to actually have been in the city to watch his grandfather being crowned king. You will never, ever see that again.
Charles, we were talking about that. We were saying, how are they going to explain to their children why they're not in these historic photographs of the first coronation in this country since 1953, when their cousins are all in the photo?
And they are Prince and Princess
And
now.
they are Prince and Princess.
You know, they should
They
be
are.
there.
And they made a song and dance about them being Prince and Princess, which they were always going to be when Charles acceded to the throne. That's always going to happen. But you see, these two will grow up. They will grow up in a far better social media society than we have, even we have at the moment. And they'll be looking back over, you know, their granddad when he was crowned and the rows that were going on about whether they were there or not. And surely they're going to be asking their parents one day, excuse me, why didn't we go to this this great event, this historic event that they could have had bragging rights for at school and everything else, and rightly so. I mean, it's just, you know, I'm just glad she's not coming. Unfortunately, the petulant prince he's going to be here. I say that unfortunately, but of course he should be here.
Yeah.
Charles, do you think, I mean, there is, you know, are they doing it out of respect? Are they doing it out of a way to even get more publicity by not coming? Or are they doing, or is Meghan not coming because she is frightened of being booed? I personally don't think the British would boo anyone at a coronation.
I'm not
but
so sure.
What do you
I think there might
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure, Don. You know, with the things that have been said by her in particular, you know, about the British public, this racist public and everything else, I'm not so sure that there will not be the odd boo. I agree with what Andrew said earlier on, or I think it was you, Don, that people won't boo in church because that's a matter completely of disrespect. But let's not forget, the streets outside are going to be jam-packed with hundreds of thousands of people, you know, who'll want a glimpse of not only just the King and the Queen, but they want a glimpse of the royals. And yeah, the odd boo may well have happened if Meghan were to be in that sort of procession, which I don't think they were going to be in any case. But no, I think it's the right thing for her to stay away. I'd be quite happy if she never ever came on these shows ever again.
Charles, that's what I wanted to ask. Do you think we will ever see Meghan on these shows again?
I can't think of anything that she and Harry will be involved in the future, royal-wise, that would require her attendance. You know, that she's got everything she wants. She's got a royal title. You know, she's got children now who've got royal titles. All correct. I'm not saying that anything's wrong with it. All correct. But she's using it, you know, to feather her own nest, using royal connections, which she hates so much. But she uses them to earn a lot of money.
You're right. He tells it as it is. Charles, thanks for joining us. That's the royal commentator, Charles Ray.
I know, very good, very honest as well. But I think, you know, going on what you're telling us this morning, there's a lot of very strong feeling and not much positivity.
We haven't had any tweets or texts from people saying, I'm really disappointed she's not going to be there. If you're out there, tell us.
Yeah.
Are you disappointed?
GB Views.
I'm not, by the way.
Let's tell them how. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Please.
So get in touch, let us know. Do you want Meghan over here? Are you pleased she's not coming? Are you sad that the children aren't going to be there for their granddad's
I'm sad for the kids.
I'm sad for the kids as well.
Bit of history.
Soppy. Right, OK, well, we do move on. The Scottish Government, under new leader Humza Yousaf, will challenge the UK government's use of Section 35 of the Scotland Act.
Effectively, what he's doing, the new First Minister, he's keeping going with Nicola Sturgeon's completely balmy plan to allow children as young as 15 and a half to change their gender without even consulting a doctor. And I suspect even their parents.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's scary, and you know, I think it's like a month, and you can just suddenly decide if you're over the age of 18 that you are the opposite gender, and that gives you access to these safe spaces, doesn't it? Right. OK. Well, let's get all the latest on this one from Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde, Sir John Curtis, who joins us now from Glasgow. Good morning, Sir John. Thank you very much for joining us. So what do you make of, you know, this being challenged? I mean, surely there are more worthy fights that, you know, the SNP could be carrying out at the moment.
To be honest, I don't think you should be surprised that the challenge has come. We have to remember here that the grounds of the challenge have nothing to do with the intrinsic merits of the proposals. And it's certainly the case that, you know, if the SNP or the Scottish Government were trying to choose an issue on which they might think it to their advantage to challenge the UK government in this way, this is not one they would choose, because we know that public opinion is not terribly keen on the changes that the Scottish Parliament passed, and even amongst SNP supporters, the issue is pretty controversial. However, there is a very important legal issue here. The issue that will go before the court is not whether or not 16 or 17-year-olds should be allowed to change their gender or any of the other aspects of the bill. The issue that will go before the court is whether or not the Secretary of State has reasonable grounds, that's the first crucial criterion, to believe that the legislation will have an adverse effect, that's the other crucial criterion, on the operation of UK-wide legislation, viz. the UK Equalities Act. Because nobody is arguing about whether or not the Scottish Parliament did or did not have the right to pass legislation about transgender recognition. The argument is about the interaction between the what the Scottish Parliament has done and existing UK law. And the honest truth is that it is irrespective of their political stance, any Scottish First Minister, when faced with the use of a power for the first time by the UK government, where perhaps there is some doubt about whether or not those criteria are being satisfied, is almost bound to take the issue to court, because in the end you're talking about defending the rights, responsibilities and authority of the institution of which you are in charge. So I don't think you should be surprised that this issue is going to be taken to court.
I get that, Sir John, and that's, of course, the technical reason, and I understand that. But politically, Humza Yousaf is coming into power, replacing Nicola Sturgeon, with the SNP's poll ratings on the slide. There's all the controversy over the financial investigation, the arrest of Nicola Sturgeon's husband, the former chief executive. And this politically, I think, will be a very, very unpopular move to prolong the agony over this gender recognition bill. It's not popular with SNP voters, Labour voters, and opposed by the Tory party north of the border.
No, you're absolutely right. No, politically, it's not the fight that you would choose. Of course, he does have pressures on the other side. Not least of the pressures on the other side is that the Greens, who are the SNP's coalition partners, have made it pretty clear that they felt that a challenge needed to be made to the UK government's position. And I think he may well have lost his 2 Green ministers if the challenge had not been pursued. So there are pressures on the other side. And we should also remember here, it's not just, this legislation is not just legislation that was passed by the SNP. It was backed by the Labour Party, it was backed by Liberal Democrats, and even some Conservative MSPs voted in favour. So this isn't just simply an SNP issue. It is a broader issue than that. But yes, I mean, politically, this is not the fight you would choose, and this is not the time which you would choose it. But in a sense, all of that is outside of Mr. Yousaf's control, as indeed obviously is true of much of the story about finances. But in the longer term, it is clearly in the interests of the Scottish Government and the Scottish Parliament to test how the courts might apply this particular piece of legislation. And I mean, and bear in mind here, Andrew, that the UK government has to come up with a case. And if you look at the case that the UK government has made, it's already acknowledged that the existing 2004 Gender Recognition Act does to some degree cut across the operation of the Equality Act, and that already people who get gender recognition under the existing legislation may therefore, as a result, have access to women's spaces, may therefore, as a result, be counted as women for the purpose of equal pay legislation. The question is whether or not the fact that the Scottish legislation might result in more people getting a certificate materially affects the operation of the Act. The other thing I think we should bear in mind in this, of course, the other development that's occurred since this veto is the UK government is now toying with changing the Equality Act itself so that actually it will, the definition in terms of protection of will be on the basis of biological sex, not on the basis of gender. Now, I think it might well be true that if indeed the Equality Act would be changed in that way, a lot of the objections that the UK government has to the current Scottish legislation would fall, because the Equality Act would no longer be affected, and the operation of the Act would no longer be affected by the granting of gender recognition certificates. So I suspect this is an issue that's going to go on for quite some while. And I think beyond that, I think the advice to Humza Yousaf would be is, having put in the legal challenge, move on. You certainly don't want to make it something that you're going to be talking about politically, but let the lawyers dig away at it, because there probably is quite a lot of material for the lawyers to dig at.
Yeah, certainly is.
Yeah, well, that's Sir John Curtius, Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
I think I get all what Sir John is saying.
Yeah, no,
it is insanity for a new Scottish leader to be taking on this madness on gender ID. It's not what the country's talking about. The country don't want it happening, and it's a fringe issue.
But he did have Nicola Sturgeon on speed dial. That was what he boasted of.
He did.
He was pulling the strings.
Joe Biden's continuing his tour of the Republic of Ireland today. He's in Dublin. He's going to meet the President of Ireland, and he's going to talk to the Irish Parliament.
Wow. It comes after the White House was forced to deny the President was anti-British following his brief meeting with the Prime Minister. Now, let's get the latest from our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who is in Dublin for us right now. Good morning again, Darren. So, what's happening?
Yeah, very good morning, Dawn and Andrew. The President is due to meet another President, Joe Biden, meeting Michael D. Higgins, who's the Irish President, in the next couple of minutes, not very far from here at his official residence in the Phoenix Park, Aros and Nutheron. There's going to be an official signing of the books as you said, the proper political element of his visit to Ireland begins. He is going to meet the President this morning, then he's going to address both houses of the Irish Parliament in Dublin this afternoon, only the fourth President to do so, and then he's going to have a big slap-up meal, kind of state dinner if you like, at Dublin Castle later on tonight, and that's kind of the big political moment here in Ireland. Of course, he was in Northern Ireland yesterday, as you say, trying to walk that tightrope carefully between trying to emphasise his kind of British heritage and his British roots, trying to tell Unionists that he was listening to them, while at the same time pleading with them to try and restore Stormont. But the moment that Joe Biden, or the bit that he's most keen on, the bit he's been most looking forward to, happened last night when he was in Dundalk, just north of Dublin here, meeting kind of his cousins, if you like, his fifth cousins, his ancestral home. Crowds did come out to greet him. The weather wasn't great, but he looked pretty relaxed, pretty chilled, touring the pubs in his baseball cap. Did make a gaffe, though, a pretty bad one, when referring to the New Zealand rugby team. Instead of calling them the All Blacks, he talked about the Black and Tans. Not great given Irish history and their pretty controversial part in the War of Independence here. That has made some of the front pages in Ireland this morning. Not great, I would say, for Joe Biden. And then tomorrow, though, he also goes to the West Coast, to another part of his ancestral home, where he's actually going to make a speech in front of ordinary Irish people. And I suspect he's going to get a pretty warm welcome. Despite that gaffe, most people here, a bit like the weather, actually quite warm and welcoming for the US presidents.
And Darren, we've got you on gaff watch, please, which might mean you'll be very busy today and tomorrow.
Indeed, yeah, I think pretty unfortunate. I think the Northern Ireland leg, actually, Andrew, went pretty well for him, in the sense that Unionists welcomed this idea that he wasn't going to be too muscular in his politics about trying to force the DUP back into government again. He kind of ticked all the boxes, praised Rishi Sunak, didn't mention Sinn Féin to a degree, in the sense that he didn't want to overemphasise that talk. And then, yeah, last night, you know, the Biden slip of the tongue, he's infamous for this, isn't he? Manages to cause a bit of an upset. I'm sure he's hoping that's not going to overshadow the next couple of days. But, as you say, he's here until Saturday lunchtime. And with Joe Biden, anything could happen.
Absolutely. That's Darren McCaffrey, our political editor, who will be with the President of the United States for the next 48 hours.
It's going to be very interesting. He's spending a lot of time there, and like literally a cup of coffee in Northern Ireland. Right, but still to come, UK economic growth flatlined in February. So did Chancellor Jeremy Hunt's recent budget help or hinder efforts to level up our economy? We'll be finding out in just a minute.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented, with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know,
All
Kate
sorts
Moss?
of
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Good morning, welcome back. It is 10:27 and you're with To The Point on GB News with Andrew Pearce, that's him, and me, Dawn Neeson.
And we're going to talk about the economy now because it's not going so well. It certainly didn't go very well in February. Manufacturing down, it's all not looking very good. So was the Chancellor's budget helpful?
Is the Chancellor's budget ever helpful? Let's find out from our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, who has a very special report from the West Midlands, Britain's manufacturing heartland.
Builders are busy in Birmingham, the UK's second biggest city. But is the government's flagship levelling up policy, spreading wealth from the southeast to the Midlands and north, now a reality?
This is Victoria Square in central Birmingham, one of several public spaces in the city that's been getting a much-needed facelift. But to what extent does levelling up extend beyond city centres to towns across Britain's regions?
Material prices have increased significantly.
In Walsall, 10 miles from central Birmingham, PP Control and Automation manufactures internal control systems which operate complex machinery. With 230 workers, PP is expanding fast. But CEO Tony Haig says the recent rise in corporation tax and still sky-high energy bills will hurt companies across the Midlands.
I think levelling up is a complete and utter joke and has been a political slogan for some time. I don't see any evidence whatsoever of any genuine activity around levelling up.
In his budget 3 weeks ago, Jeremy Hunt announced low tax investment zones, including parts of Birmingham. But the leader of the city's Labour-run council says levelling up isn't happening.
The Office of Budget Responsibility are forecasting a downgrading of the UK growth over the coming 12 months as a result of the Conservative budget. So I think it was very, very disappointing. We're also faced with the cost of living crisis right across the city. And again, the OBR are saying that living standards are going to have their hardest hit since the 1950s. So I don't think the budget offered very much.
Birmingham has a Labour council, but the West Midlands as a whole has a Tory mayor. Andy Street says the new investment zones will encourage growth, making levelling up a reality.
We're standing in what you would probably say is Britain's best and biggest, most successful enterprise zone here in the city centre. That has definitely bolstered growth. We've seen behind you HSBC coming in, Goldman Sachs coming in there. They probably wouldn't have done to this location if it hadn't been for that status. So we've learned from that. We've proposed to government those new measures. They've agreed. That will definitely bolster growth.
So what do ordinary Brummies say? Is levelling up just a slogan?
I think it's always going to be London, and always has been, really. I can't really see that happening. I think that's always going to be the case. It's where the money is.
Yeah, it's written, but there are some areas that they are not really working on.
Probably a gimmick, isn't it, like most things are, so. But that's as much as I know about it.
As the economy struggles to recover and manufacturers fight on, the success or otherwise of levelling up could decide the next general election. Yet even in Birmingham city centre, this flagship policy is, at best, a work in progress. Liam Halligan, GB News, in Birmingham.
Interesting report, thank you very much. Now, right, still to come, we'll be talking royals again and all the other stories from today's papers with Joanna Williams and Anna McGovern. That's after your morning news with the lovely Beverley Elsie.
Dawn, thank you. Here's your latest headlines from the GB newsroom at 10:31. The Chancellor says the outlook for the UK economy is brighter than expected, despite new figures showing there was no growth in February. Data from the Office for National Statistics shows a 0.4% decrease in gross domestic product from January. The service sector fell too, with the ONS blaming strike action by teachers and civil servants. A fall in gas and electric usage due to milder weather was also to blame. But the figures do show GDP grew 0.1% in the 3 months to February. Jeremy Hunt says the UK is set to avoid a recession. US President Joe Biden will address the Irish Parliament today and meet with Taoiseach Leo Varadkar as his visit continues. The President will spend 3 days in the Republic of Ireland after having spent a short time in Northern Ireland to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. Yesterday, thousands gathered to greet him on a tour of his ancestors' home county, which Joe Biden said felt like coming home. Donald Trump is suing his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, for £400 million. The former US president is seeking damages after Cohen testified before the Manhattan grand jury that indicted him. Trump has accused Cohen of failing to honour attorney-client confidentiality and of profiting by spreading falsehoods about him in books and podcasts. Cohen's lawyer called the lawsuit frivolous. And in some breaking news, the body of a woman has been found washed up on a beach after a search and rescue operation off Brighton Palace Pier. Coast Guard helicopters and RNLI lifeboats were involved in the rescue effort, which was launched on Wednesday afternoon after a report of a person in the sea. The heavy winds of Storm Noah had made search efforts challenging. Sussex police say an investigation is underway. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Back to Andrew and Dawn in just a second, but first here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2513 and €1.1363. The price of gold is £1,620.53 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 7,818 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Hello and welcome back. Thank you, Bethany. Right, now, Prince Harry says he's coming to the coronation, yay, next month, but Meghan won't be. Boo.
Hooray, actually. What's changed his mind? We're going to be asking the royal broadcaster Ray Pagel-Mankiw next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10:37. You're with To The Point on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Dawn Neeson.
Right. Oh, Buckingham Palace has confirmed that Prince Harry will be attending the King's coronation next month, but his wife Meghan will not.
Hurrah.
Right, royal broadcaster and historian Rafe Haydale-Mancu joins us this morning to give us his take on the whole thing. Rafe, this story is fascinating, isn't it? I really hate myself for talking endlessly about Harry and Meghan, but let's face it, it's on the front of every newspaper. And
around the world.
Avoid it. Around the world.
Yeah.
Around the world. Rafe, what do you make of Harry coming and Meghan not?
Yes, well, look, it was important to the King that Harry should come. You know, we know that he wants to have both his sons there for what is essentially the most important day in his life. And also, I imagine, because never in history has an adult son not attended the coronation of his father. But for the rest of the country and, you know, and the nation and indeed the Commonwealth, this whole episode has been just extremely frustrating to have this will they or won't they moment. But I'm glad now that we finally got some sort of settlement on this whole issue. But of course, Harry previously stated that he wouldn't attend the coronation if he didn't get an apology from the palace. For what they really need to apologise, we don't know. So whether there was an apology behind the scenes, we don't know. I think it's rather unlikely. But, you know, they've had a really bad year, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. I think 2023 could be said to be their own annus horribilis. You know, we've had the backlash to their book Spare, which sold very well, but was critically not a success. People were making fun of it, from everything from South Park to Chris Rock to every US talk show host. Their poll ratings took a huge pummeling after the book came out. In America, they're now less popular than Prince Andrew, if you can imagine that. And I think people, even their friends, are realizing that they're becoming increasingly irrelevant, haven't got much more to say. And I think they realize that it's their proximity to the royal family that really makes them who they are at the end of the day. And so by going to the coronation, Harry is sort of maintaining this illusion that he's still relevant. And I think maybe he also realizes if he doesn't somehow extend an olive branch in some capacity, then his future will be very bleak if he doesn't have some contact and connection with the palace and the family.
Rafe, we've had some interesting messages from viewers and listeners saying much the same. They're pleased that Meghan's not going. They're pleased Harry's going, but they're saying, why didn't Harry bring Archie? 4 years old, he's old enough, and he could then be in the photograph, the historic photograph of the first coronation since 1953. He's a royal prince, because when he grows up, he gets a little bit older, he's going to be wondering why he's not in that photograph and his royal cousins are.
That's right. And you can, if you go remember back to 1953, wonderful photographs of the young Prince Charles as he then was. And it's lovely to have that idea of the next generation. Yeah. You're quite right. But of course, we know that Archie didn't get an invitation specifically, but the palace was waiting to see whether Harry would attend. and then accommodation would have been possible. But of course, it's very convenient that the date falls upon his 4th birthday, because it provides the perfect excuse for Meghan not to attend, to say that she's looking after her children and the birthday in California. I sort of rather wonder what her excuse would have been for not attending had this been taking place in June, you know?
But what a 4th birthday that would be for that young boy to look back on in years to come. The most historic date in the history of the royal family.
The boasting power at school. What did you do on your 4th birthday? Oh, my granddad was crowned king.
Yeah, king of 14 realms.
Better than jelly and ice cream.
Yeah, I mean, it is an extraordinary miss by Harry and Meghan, I think.
It's an extraordinary miss, but it's also something else. It's as if Meghan is trying to equate a child's 4th birthday with the coronation, as if these are events of equal status. You know, of course, what could be a better birthday present for a grandchild than to see their granddad crowned king, someone that they haven't actually got to know or see at all? So I think you're quite right on that level. And also, I mean, most kids don't remember their 4th birthdays. I don't remember my 4th birthday. So I'm sure whatever party they're going to have in Montecito will be soon forgotten.
Rafe, now Harry is coming over here. What role will he actually be playing on the day?
Well, not much at all. So he's not a working member of the royal family. So we expect things to somehow follow along the lines of the Platinum Jubilee, where, if you remember, they didn't form part of the official procession during the church service. And they were seated off to one side, still with members of the family, with Beatrice and Eugenie and all of that, but definitely not part of the core team, the core element of the royal family. And we know that there won't be a balcony appearance for Prince Harry either. Of course, we have to remember Prince William will be front and centre of all of this. And thinking about Archie, Prince George will be a page, and there'll be so many of Archie's cousins who will be taking part in some capacity or other. But we don't know whether Prince Harry will be doing anything much after the actual service itself. His biographer, Omid Scobie, said that he'll just be making a brief visit, implying it will be just for the service. Also, we don't really expect, I think, that he's going to be wearing uniform on this occasion. There was an exemption made for him previously, but I think on this time we can expect him to be wearing morning suit, as we can expect most likely also for Prince Andrew, who seems to have been vetoed from wearing his robes of a Knight of the Garter.
Just finally on that, Rafe, isn't the fact is Harry and Meghan, they'll be in the cheap seats, won't they? They'll be in the cheap seats with Prince Andrew and other minor royals. The Duke and Duchess of Gloucester will have a more prominent position, and most people wouldn't know them if they walked in this studio right now.
Yes, absolutely, and the Duke and Duchess of Kent as well. Well, not the Duchess, but they're working royals. You know, they've dedicated their lives, and they've shown a great deal more loyalty to the crown, and their lives have been one of faultless dedication to the concept of duty and responsibility and serving the nation. So I think it's only right that they should be seen there. And maybe it will serve as a lesson, you know, a wake-up call to Harry. If he wants to enjoy all the plum perks of royal life, he has to do some graft.
Right, OK, we have to move on. Thank you very much. We don't have royals walking into the studio. Thank you, Rafe Haidel-Manku, royal commentator and historian. But we do have our newspaper reviewers walking into the studio.
Newspaper royalty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that is political commentator Anna McGovern and author and academic Joanna Williams. Welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us today. Right, OK, well, the front pages, obviously, we've all got that story, haven't we, of the royals. So what are we kicking off with? Who's going first on this one? Anna, are you going first?
Yes, I am.
We haven't got a royal story, though.
No.
Well done for finding one.
Well, I actually have a face mask story, but I'm happy. I am very happy to talk about the royals as well.
OK, go on, talk about face masks.
Let's talk about face masks. So the story I have here today, so they're saying no evidence face masks protected the vulnerable people from the COVID-19. So I think during this term...
Who's saying that?
So that's coming from the Telegraph today.
Right.
So this has been circulating. So I think for...
It's the UK Health Security Agency. Yeah.
Yes. Just to be clear, yes, sorry. So I think with this story, I think many people were very angry at the beginning of the kind of lockdown and everything, and because as more evidence came out with COVID-19 and the transmission, and I think many people were very upset because the government, they pretty much coerce people into wearing face masks. It was a social responsibility.
Well, you
if
had
you
to,
didn't,
you had to on public transport.
Yeah, you had to. It was the law, and if you didn't, you'd be breaking the law. And they were saying that you'd be putting other people at risk of COVID-19 and everything. So I think now people are feeling very lacking faith in the government because all this evidence that's since come out with the lockdown files, the parties with the government, having wine and cheese, birthday cake and all of that. And I think many people are very upset because they were put under what I would say are draconian lockdown measures, and then they just see the government as a kind of like one rule for them, one rule for us mentality, because the government were completely ignoring the rules that they set, and the public were all forced to follow them suit.
Joanna, to defend the government, and I'm not necessarily defending them because I did wear a mask because that was the law, and I was always sceptical, but they were telling us that they were following the science.
Well, they were, but I think what's come out since,
Yeah.
particularly in relation to Matt Hancock's WhatsApp exchanges,
Oh, yes, him.
has shown that this was a very fluid, let's say, concept, which anybody with any understanding of science kind of knew that that was the case. We tend to put... the way science was talked about during the pandemic was if it came with a capital letter and a word "the" in front of it, the science.
The science.
There was one.
They never shared the science.
No, exactly. You speak to any scientist and they will tell you that the issues are always contestable. You set out to prove and disprove hypotheses. There is never one science that's always correct for all time. And I actually think, particularly in relation to face masks, right since the very beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of dispute about it was contested, let's say, as to how effective they would be. And this is a very good quality report, I would say, that's being discussed in the Telegraph this morning. It's from the UK Health Security Agency, and their investigation isn't into just the kind of paper masks that people were buying to throw away on a daily basis, or the kind of horrible grubby bits of cloth that people were making for themselves. This study is actually referring to high-quality masks such as the N95, the real proper kind of builders
The one they
mask.
said with the gold standard.
They did.
Gold standard.
And it's unable to find a single piece of scientific research which had usable data to back up this. Now, what annoys me is that masks were promoted all along as, well, it's consequence-free. Even if they don't have any benefit, well, what's the harm? And if you're a moral person, you should. And I think that was a really bad starting point for the argument, because I think masks did have bad, negative consequences.
For child development.
For children, for deaf people who rely on lip reading, communication problems. But I think also just particularly for elderly people, people who live alone, seeing somebody smile on your daily walk or your interactions in shop actually makes such a difference to your mental health. And we were denied that.
And also for the autistic community as well.
People forget that.
I mean, I have got a friend who, her lad is 16 years, severely autistic, couldn't wear a face mask, just couldn't cope with it, but it's a big strapping man. And you can't tell by looking at him. And she was actually screamed out on the tube because her 16-year-old lad was not wearing a face mask.
Yes, I can still remember people pointing to me saying, because perhaps my mask had slipped a bit, and I used to think, get stuffed. I'm wearing this mask, and if it slipped a bit, mind your own business.
Just like if you feel that strongly about it and you're that scared, just lock yourself down at home. Like, don't go out in public then.
This should, Anna, form a big part of the public inquiry into COVID, which is starting, I think, any time soon, and will last at least 5 years.
Possibly, yes.
Yes, and to be fair, I think that's actually quite important. I think the government do need to be held to account. I think the public deserve... yes, exactly. And tell us where the evidence came and what is the science. I'd love to know what the science is, because the science seems to be changing depending on what your opinion is.
The science was the fact that they terrorised this deliberately, as we know from the WhatsApp messages.
And what about the hundreds of masks I've got in my cupboard at home, which I bought? Because we never knew how long this wretched thing was going to last
and
for.
More importantly, what about the hundreds of masks, millions of masks, probably billions floating around in
Absolutely. But I think one of the most damaging aspects of the whole mask-wearing thing for me was the way they were imposed upon school children. And what came out in the Matt Hancock WhatsApp messages was that this was a purely political decision because they didn't want England to be out of kilter with Scotland.
Yes, it was follow my leader, wasn't it?
Exactly.
It was the mentality of the sheep.
No, they were
They're closing
worried.
down, so we'll close down. They're wearing masks, so we will. Nicola Sturgeon was always one step ahead.
I was going to say, so actually during 2020, I was actually finishing my A-levels, and then I was actually in the first, so coming into September, I was then working at the school and doing my degree at the same time. And it was even asking Year 7s to keep their face masks on, like they were telling us to do that. I never did because I didn't feel strongly about it. I didn't think that, you know, little children should be forced to wear a face covering all day. But, you know, especially for children, like it's just like this piece of, this face covering on you all day. And I think it just disrupts your day, you know, sort of just going to school. You just should be able to go to school, be able to interact with your peers without this fear constantly held over your head.
How did teachers communicate with the kids? How did they?
Well, I think very badly.
Very badly.
And I think this is why we're seeing a big fall in educational attainment across the country, but in the most deprived areas, the biggest fall of all. Because not only were teachers enforcing mask wearing and wearing masks themselves, they would often stand at the front of the class and not even approach children.
Because of the social distancing.
Exactly.
Let's move on to still being able to breathe easily without a dirty cloth across your face. Joanna, this is your story. This is from the Evening Standard, but this, believe me, this is coming to a city or town near you soon.
Yeah, it is.
Sadiq Khan will face a High Court challenge this summer over his bid to expand the ULEZ.
So this is the London low emission zone.
Yeah, so what's happening here?
Yeah, so exactly as you say, there's going to be a legal challenge to the expansion. People saying that there wasn't sufficient consultation, that has a particular impact upon people who live in the buffer zone around the edges, and they're going to appeal. Various local people within London are going to appeal against this. And I have to say, good. I'm very, very glad.
This is several London boroughs, isn't it?
London boroughs, that's right.
I think there's about 8 boroughs now. We're up to 8, and a lot of them are poorer boroughs, like Barking and Dagenham, where a lot of people drive their white vans, and it's going to cost them £12.50 now to drive in any part, and on top of the congestion charge.
No, absolutely. I mean, it seems to me that Sadiq Khan's been on an anti-car crusade, essentially, exactly as you say, Dawn, much like the local authority leaders in different parts of the country. I'm from Canterbury. Canterbury has the most ludicrous 15-minute city plan, whatever you want to call it.
Literally in sections.
We're being divided into sections. But Canterbury, for viewers who are unfamiliar, it's it's not really a city at all. I mean, it's got the label of city, but it's a town, essentially, with a very small population. And the bonkers thing about particularly Canterbury, but I'm sure it's the same in other places, it will actually, I think, lead to more emissions, because for me to drop my daughter off at school, for example, I will have to drive out all the way around a ring road and back in through the other end. I mean, it makes no sense. But this has been pushed through because it's, like I say, an anti-car crusade. But it really ignores the reality of people's lives.
He says it's going to save 4,000 lives. Again, where is the scientific evidence?
Yeah, where is the science again, everyone? Where is the science? And I think I just echo everything that she said. And I'm actually from Canterbury as well. My family's all from there, so I know Canterbury very well. And I think this is just, again, the government just trying to control our lives again.
This is the mayor.
The mayor, yes. And and this is just being pushed through again, and I do not see the point of this. I think it's again this like climate agenda again, just like I think that this will just do more harm than good.
Right, okay, unfortunately, we have to move on.
I'm telling you, this is the Tories' best chance to kick Labour out, because it is so unpopular.
Thank you, Anna McGovern and Joanna Williams. You'll be back later on. Right, more to come in the next hour. We'll be bringing you the latest on Scotland's gender reform bill and the coronation. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome to your Thursday weather update from the Met Office. I'm Claire Nazir. Still showery out there, some sunshine coming through. We've lost the sting in the wind, which is good news, but still fresh. Low pressure sinking down towards the Low Countries. You can see this area of cloud and rain waiting in the wings. That will bring some wet weather across to more southern parts on Friday. Before that, though, low pressure firmly in charge, and that means more showers. Some dry weather across central parts of England and Wales, but further north, always a swathe of clouds, showery bursts of rain, which could turn heavy. Later then, we'll see more cloud just encroaching across the southwest. But before that, some dry weather to end the day, as temperatures climb to around 10 to 14 degrees Celsius, so slightly higher than yesterday. Now, through Thursday evening and overnight, that shower rain continues across the north as well as the east. You can see some clearer skies where we could see a touch of frost before thickening cloud brings some outbreaks of rain towards the West Country through the early hours of the morning. It is going to be a cold night away from the southwest where it will be wet, but showers will continue across the far north of Scotland. And here we'll see temperatures holding around 4 degrees Celsius, picking up again as we head into tomorrow morning once the sun gets to work. First thing then on Friday morning, this rain skirts central southern parts of England and Wales, lingering towards the east. Showers develop inland. They'll develop readily tomorrow. They're likely to be heavy with the risk of thunder. You can see some intense bursts, particularly across the eastern side of the country. Brighter weather to end the day, this time across the western side of Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. And temperatures here 12 or 13 degrees Celsius. Here's your outlook through Saturday. Some showery bursts yet again towards the east. Dry skies elsewhere after a bit of a frosty start, but at least though you'll see some sunshine and a light wind. Temperatures though through the next few days are slowly rising. It is going to feel warmer. There will be some sunshine in the mix, but always more clouds and a little rain towards the north as well as the west. Bye-bye.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
It's 11 a.m. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Andrew Pearce, and Dawn Neeson.
Yay! Or her, as he calls me these days. Right, Harry is coming, Meghan isn't. The latest will they, won't they, Windsor saga is over. We'll have plenty of right royal debate and gossip. Got some good stories on this one. The coronation build-up.
Yeah, we're with Joe Biden in Ireland. He's going to address the Irish Parliament. And we're also on Gaff Watch, because, by my word, did he make a shocker of one. about the rugby team, which he got horribly wrong.
I mean, he was in a pub, it's teetotal, so he hasn't even got that excuse like we had. Right, meanwhile, Scotland's First Minister, Humza Yousaf, is preparing for a constitution showdown with the UK government over his bill to allow 16-year-olds, 15 and a half, actually, to change their gender.
It's mad. And we've got an exclusive report on a rebellion against Keir Starmer by Labour activists over his flip-flopping, he does a lot of that, this time on transgender rights.
This is all about what you think, not what he thinks, not what I think, because we're not that important, we're just reading stuff. So let us know your thoughts on all these talking points today. Email us at gbnews@gbnews.uk. But first, here is your morning news roundup with Bethany Elsey.
Good morning, it's 1 minute past 11. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. The Chancellor says the outlook for the UK economy is brighter than expected. That's despite new figures showing there was no growth in February. Data from the Office for National Statistics shows a 0.4% decrease in gross domestic product from January. The service sector fell, with the ONS blaming strike action by teachers and civil servants. A fall in gas and electric usage due to milder weather was also responsible. But the figures do show GDP grew 0.1% in the 3 months to February. Jeremy Hunt says the UK is set to avoid a recession. The US President Joe Biden will address the Irish Parliament today and meet with Taoiseach Leo Varadkar as his visit continues. And we're showing you live pictures now from the Republic of Ireland. The President is due to meet with Ireland's President, Michael D. Higgins, and of course we'll bring you those live pictures as and when we get them. President Biden will spend 3 days in the Republic of Ireland after having spent a short time in Northern Ireland to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. Yesterday, though, thousands greeted to meet him on a tour of his ancestral homeland. And in a speech, Joe Biden said it felt like coming home.
I said last time I was here, in a sense, I know why my ancestors and many of your relatives left during the famine. And, you know, when you're here, you wonder why anyone would ever want to leave. I mean it. So it's good to be back.
A 74-year-old man has been extradited from Pakistan and charged with the murder of a female police officer over 17 years ago. 38-year-old PC Sharon Beshnivsky was shot in 2005 while responding to a robbery in Bradford. Piran Ditta Khan is due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court later. Police will spend less time dealing with social media spats and more time responding to crime on the streets. Under new Home Office plans, officers will only have to record social media cases if they cross the criminal threshold. The move is part of a series of measures to cut what the government has described as unnecessary red tape. The National Police Chiefs Council says more than 440,000 officer hours are spent on admin tasks. Policing Minister Chris Philp told us it's the right step forward.
The public expect the police to be catching criminals and keeping them safe, and that's what these changes are designed to help do. Nobody wants the police to be wasting time on unnecessary paperwork. Of course, you've got to keep proper records, obviously, but it's gone a bit too far, and we're tipping the balance back. And I think saving nearly 500,000 hours a year of police time is a really important step forward.
The body of a woman has been found washed up on the beach after a search operation off Brighton Palace Pier. Coast Guard helicopters and RNLI lifeboats were involved in the rescue effort, which was launched yesterday afternoon after a report of a person in the sea. The heavy winds of Storm Noah had made search efforts challenging, and Sussex police say an investigation is underway. A government minister is calling on junior doctors to suspend what he calls extremely damaging strike action while talks take place. Thousands of medics with the BMA in England are walking out for the third of 4 days of industrial action this week. The conciliation service ACAS has said it's ready to help broker talks to resolve the pay dispute. Policing Minister Chris Philp says the government is prepared to negotiate, but pay demands must be reasonable. Downing Street had previously refused to talk unless the request of a 35% pay rise was dropped. Donald Trump is suing his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, for £400 million. The former US president is seeking damages after Cohen testified before the Manhattan grand jury that indicted him. Trump has accused Cohen of failing to honour attorney-client confidentiality and of profiting by spreading falsehoods about him. Cohen's lawyer called the lawsuit frivolous. London's Waterloo has been brought to a standstill amid a major signalling problem. South Western Railway is warning commuters to avoid the station with widespread disruption and a significantly reduced service. Engineers are working to fix the problem, but it's expected to last for most of the day. And the Royal Mint is set to release a new range of commemorative coins featuring a crowned portrait of the King for the very first time. The collection depicts King Charles III wearing the Tudor crown, which he personally chose for the portrait. A 50p and a £5 coin will be released later this month, ahead of the coronation in May. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Andrew and Dawn.
Well, everyone's talking about Harry and Meghan.
It's on
surprisingly,
the front pages
every front page,
yeah.
worldwide. It's a huge story. I've had calls from all around the world about it, and the lots. So Richard says, interesting, Richard. It'll be interesting to see if Netflix come with Harry. Maybe they need more money. Netflix will need Harry and Meghan to still be seen in a royal context, because otherwise they're irrelevant.
I'm still a little bit cynical. Look, I know Meghan isn't coming because it's Archie's 4th birthday.
Yeah, right.
You know, it sort of snuck up on them. No one realised it
No.
was his 4th birthday. It's only been happening for like 4 years now. But I'm slightly cynical that Netflix and other American TV companies might be offering Meghan quite a bit of money to commentate from California. Maybe I'm just cynical.
Well,
but
they're increasingly referred to as celebrities.
Well, absolutely.
And she could be on a celebrity panel.
Yeah. John. Oh, John, you're not a fan, are you? Good morning. Fan of us, obviously, not of Harry and Meghan. John, you say, let's have Harry and Meghan's title taken away. If our royalty wants to continue, the sooner they dump this poisonous pair, the better. Charles needs to get real and put his whinging son into place.
And Corinne says, would just like to say I've thoroughly watched... Oh, this is nice. Enjoyed watching Dawn and Andrew on To The Point. Good debate with interesting and current topics.
Yeah.
Well, how nice. And it's been very nice working with Dawn.
Thank you very much, Corinne, as well. Is that your mum's name, by the way?
She's not with us, sadly.
Oh,
my
right.
mum was Betty. And let me tell you about my mum. Great monarchist. She slept outside Buckingham Palace the night before the coronation. She was already pregnant with my eldest sister.
It's not when we conceived.
No. With my dad, they'd been married a year, and they were there all night, and they caught just to catch a glimpse of the coronation carriage and the beautiful, she said, Princess Elizabeth, and it stayed with her, the event, for all her life, which is why it's crazy that Harry is not bringing his son.
This is why I think it's so important. I mean, 70 years, you know, Archie is old enough, he's 4, he could take part in this.
In the photos.
It's so, absolutely, so important.
Let's talk to our royal reporter, Cameron Walker. Cameron, finally, they've put us out of our misery. You're outside Westminster Abbey, where it's all going to happen, of course.
Yeah, it absolutely is, Andrew, and of course it has been a pretty turbulent time, hasn't it, between the Sussexes and the rest of the royal family. And in the Abbey behind me is going to be the first time, we think, that Prince Harry has seen his extended family since A, the Netflix series, very controversial Netflix series, and B, his bombshell memoir, Spare. Now, the timing of the statement yesterday, or the 2 statements, was pretty significant because we had Buckingham Palace and the Sussex spokesperson release pretty much identical statements around 3 p.m, which suggests to me there has been some level of cooperation there between the 2 camps. But this is, of course, after months of what the Mail, I think, describes as transatlantic ping-pong negotiations behind the scenes as to whether or not Harry or Meghan will attend the coronation. Now, of course, we know it's Prince Harry only attending the coronation. Some are seeing this as Meghan snubbing the event, considering the fact that the King walked her down the aisle during her wedding to Prince Harry. Then, of course, there's been reported demands not being met, Harry wanting some sort of apology from the royal family, and the fear, perhaps, from Meghan that she will receive pretty much an unwelcoming response from the crowds here in central London on the day. But I think perhaps what's more likely is Meghan wanting to spend time with her oldest child, Prince Archie, on his 4th birthday, which is, of course, on the day of the coronation. Harry has returned to the UK a lot more often than Meghan has. She's only returned 3 times since Megxit. Harry, as I said, been a lot more often, but we're not expecting him to have an official role in the coronation behind me. He's only going to be there as a member of the extended royal family. We think he'll be sat in rows behind the front row, as it were, and he certainly won't be, as we understand it, be paying homage to the sovereign, as would be tradition of royal princes in previous coronations. We're expecting that only to be Prince William. And speaking of Prince William, of course, will there be reconciliation between him and Harry? I think very unlikely is the answer to that. Yes, they'll be in the same room, but it's only a fleeting visit from Prince Harry. He'll be flying straight back to California, as we understand it, to spend time with his family. But the fact that the statements have been released by both camps, the Sussex soap opera continues, doesn't it, Dawn and Andrew? It just adds to the fuel to the fire, the speculation, the headlines. But I think from Buckingham Palace's perspective, they are hoping by doing it 3 weeks before the big event, one of the most important days of the King's life, they're hoping by the time of the coronation, the spotlight will be focused back on the King and Queen Consort.
Cameron, yeah, we really hope that is the case. Cameron, look, while I completely understand why William and King Charles would be terrified to talk to Harry when he does come over here, does Harry have any allies in the royal family? I think he's quite close to his cousin Zara, is he?
He's quite close to his cousin Beatrice, as we understand it. She has made the journey to California a few times. They have been paparazzi photographs of Prince Harry, Meghan, Princess Beatrice and her husband Jack Brooksbank in Los Angeles. I think that was around a year ago. And also they share, sorry, when I say Beatrice, I mean Eugenie, apologies. And they essentially share Frogmore Cottage, or at least they did when Harry and Meghan were away in California. But now Princess Eugenie and her husband Jack have moved to Portugal. The property's laying empty, isn't it? And Prince Harry, we think, is going to be the last time he's staying in Frogmore Cottage before he's at the coronation, before he's effectively kicked out, because the lease is running out. So he does have some allies, I think, and the King still loves his son, obviously. We've been told that by spokespeople over the last few years. But in terms of being a working member of the royal family, that's clearly over. And I think the relationship between Harry and William is going to take a lot to repair that one.
I've had another thought about why Meghan will find it difficult at this coronation. She would have to curtsy to Kate, who is a much more senior member of the royal family, and she'd also have to curtsy to the Prince of Wales. She is now the Princess of Wales. She'd have to curtsy him. I think it would stick in her craw, because we know she hasn't liked playing second fiddle. She knew she was marrying the spare, and if she didn't know what that meant, that's Harry's fault for not explaining it.
Look, I get that. I really hate the Yoko Ono thing where it's always the women's fault. I mean, because
no, it's Harry's fault.
It is Harry's fault.
He's the royal.
He's a grown man. He served. You know, he served in the armed forces. He's a grown man. He should be able to make up his own mind and go his own way. So I do. But you know what? I just want them to be friends again.
They're not going to happen.
I know. I was lucky enough to back in the day interview Princess Diana.
Right.
At a Children of Courage award, ironically, and the boys were little. And she was lovely with the children that were there, sort of like severely disabled children. And she was so lovely about her boys, Andrew. And you know what she said to me? And every time I get a story like this about the fact that they're not talking, I just think what she said back in the day, she goes, I love the way William looks after Harry. He really is just the best big brother a little boy could have. And you know what? Oh, God, why am I crying? And I just go back to what she said then when the boys were little, and the situation now where they're not even talking to one another. And I just think it's incredibly sad. I'm sorry.
And you know what, Dawn? I'm sure if Princess Diana was still alive, she'd have knocked their heads together.
Well, you hope so, wouldn't you? I know.
Now, a 74-year-old man's going to appear in court today charged with the murder of PC Sharon Bishnevsky, who was killed in Bradford all the way back in 2005.
Yeah, Pirandita Khan was extradited from Pakistan and taken into custody at West Yorkshire Police Station.
Our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, he's outside Westminster. He's outside the Magistrates' Courts right now. Paul.
Yeah, morning. Yes, an hour ago, Pirandita Khan appeared for a very brief hearing. It was only 15 minutes. The charges were read to him. 6 counts, 4 of them firearms offences, also 1 for robbery. And we heard just very brief details of those 4 firearm offences in relation to weapons, including a MAC-10 pattern submachine gun and a 9mm pistol. But most serious of all, he's accused of the murder of PC Bishnevsky, who was gunned down while attending a robbery at a travel agent in Bradford in 2005. The 38-year-old mother of 3 and 2 stepchildren had only been serving at West Yorkshire Police for 9 months. Her colleague, PC Teresa Milburn, was seriously injured in the same incident. 6 men have already been convicted of robbery. 3 of those 6 men also convicted for murder and firearms offences, and 2 for manslaughter. Now, Khan was charged in 2006. It wasn't until January 2020 that police in Pakistan arrested him, and then 3 years later he's been extradited back to Britain, where this morning, as I say, there was a very brief hearing. The charges were read to him. He stood only to give his name and his date of birth. And now another hearing has been scheduled for the Central Criminal Court, also known as the Old Bailey, on Monday, although the Crown did say that the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, did say that they do want it moved to Leeds Crown Court, but at the moment it's scheduled for the Central Criminal Court, also known as the Old Bailey, on Monday.
All right. Fascinating story, Paul Hawkins. I can still remember the killing of that police officer.
I
it was
can.
shocking.
It doesn't feel like it's that long ago, but...
And it's always more shocking, I'm afraid, when it's a woman murdered like that in uniform.
It is, and it shouldn't make a difference, because every life in uniform is a loss. But I mean, it does make a difference, and it was just a horrific story. So hopefully some justice will finally be done. Right, we're moving to Scotland now. The Scottish Government, under new leader Humza Yousaf, will challenge the UK Government's use of Section 35 of the Scotland Act.
The government have used it to stop this gender recognition bill from becoming law in Scotland, because they say it will impact in England and Wales. And, of course, this bill will allow children as young as 15 and a half to change their gender without even consulting a doctor.
Without even telling their parents.
Oh, their parents.
Right, let's get the latest on this from historian and columnist at the Courier, Andrew Liddle. Good morning, Andrew. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Good morning, Andrew. What do you make of this move?
Well, it's pretty extraordinary. Humza Yousaf, has only been First Minister for a couple of weeks. He doesn't have his troubles to seek already, and yet he seems determined to seek them nevertheless. I think it's a big mistake, this decision, for 2 reasons, really. Firstly, I think that, as the former First Minister Alex Salmond said, it's really a lose-lose for the First Minister and the Scottish Government, regardless of the outcome. I think, if they lose the case in the court, then Humza is humiliated, his authority is immediately undermined. But also, even if they win the case, they're then in the position of forcing through this very contentious and unpopular legislation on the people of Scotland. So it's an issue from that point of view, but perhaps even more fundamentally, it's a huge issue for the SNP, which was deeply, deeply divided over this legislation. Towards the end of last year, the former First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, was given a real headache by people in her own party with concerns about some of the issues you've just mentioned there. She suffered the biggest and unprecedented backbench rebellion. She suffered the resignation of a senior minister, again, unprecedented. So this is a hugely contentious issue within the SNP. And of course, Humza Yousaf, the new First Minister, has really struggled to unite the party behind him in the last 2 weeks. since he was elected leader, and this is only going to make it much worse.
It underlines the suspicion, doesn't it, too, Andrew, that he's not just a continuity candidate, but Nicola Sturgeon is still pulling all the strings, because didn't he say during the leadership contest he'll have her on speed dial, and this policy was huge, really, really closely associated with her, and the easiest thing to do would have been to quietly bury it.
That's absolutely right, Andrew. I think, me personally, I thought that Hamza actually, when he said during the leadership election he was going to do this, I didn't think he would. I think, as you say, I assumed he would quietly drop it because it's so contentious. But that's clearly not the case, and you do see Nicola Sturgeon's influence there. You also see the influence very strongly, though, of the Scottish Green Party, which, of course, has a cooperation agreement with the SNP in the Scottish Parliament. And they are also very, very pro this legislation. And Hamza is very, very keen to keep that cooperation agreement in place, possibly at the detriment to some of the views in his own party, it seems.
You know, this whole mess has managed to alienate sort of like, obviously, you know, 50% of the population, i.e. us women, as we're still allowed to call ourselves. But it's also upsetting the LGBTQ plus community, because there is so much confusion on what's going on. Now, the bottom line in this is it's not necessarily the transgender problem itself. It is actually the legal aspect of Westminster dictating what Scotland does, isn't it? That is the bottom line with this one.
That's right. I think Hamza Yousaf, as I said, has had a lot of difficulties in his first couple of weeks as First Minister. I know a lot of them have been covered excellently on your programmes. And this is potentially a way of distracting from those issues and trying to regain the initiative. I don't think that will work. I think there are much better methods he could have used. But I think clearly there is politics at play here, and setting up a clash with the UK government over this issue, is textbook SNP behaviour, really.
It's the wrong issue to go down all guns blazing, isn't it? Completely the wrong issue. It's hugely unpopular in Scotland. It's hugely unpopular in the whole country, this idea.
That's right. And I think that will get only worse when we have what will presumably be a lengthy legal battle over this, where the taxpayers in Scotland and indeed the UK are going to have to foot the bill for this case. Yes, and it's deeply unpopular, and I think that will make it even more unpopular.
Andrew Little.
Andrew Little, historian
and columnist on the Courier. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, we know we're going to see the President of the United States quite shortly in Ireland. He's due to join the Irish President, not to be confused with the Taoiseach.
Taoiseach, no, absolutely. I've spent all morning practicing that.
I think that is the Irish President's official residence. That's in Michael Higgins is the President of Ireland, and that's that lovely park in Dublin. What's it called?
Very gorgeous.
It's I've forgotten what the park's called. So he'll be there. It'll be choreographed. I think he's going to have lunch with him, and then he's going to go on to the Irish Parliament. I think he'll be only the 5th President of the United States to address the Irish Parliament. Do you think he'll know which Parliament he's addressing?
Oh, Andrew, you are so naughty
but he
this
does.
morning.
I mean, that gaffe yesterday in the pub in Northern Ireland when he referred to his cousin, 5th cousin, who'd taken part in a very famous rugby match where he'd beaten the Black and Tans. Yes. It was the All Blacks. The Black and Tans were the very controversial English lot that were incorporated into Ireland in the War of Independence. Yeah. And they were accused of all sorts of atrocities against the Catholic community. They were
so awful that a lot of the people in Ireland were convinced that basically all the Brits had done was just emptied the prisons, put them in the black and tan uniform, and got them out there to quell the rebellion.
And so he'd already had to deny reports, not least from our very own Arlene Foster, that he hates the UK, and this would have really alienated the unionist community by bringing up the Black and Tans from 100 years ago.
I mean, it was either, as you say, just a sort of like a bit of a mental blank there. Are we seeing anything happening? Not quite, no. Or it was a Freudian slip, and one hope it wasn't a Freudian slip.
And we've got Darren McCaffrey out there in Ireland, of course, and we've put him on gaff watch, and as he's with him until Saturday lunchtime, I suspect he's going to be very, very busy.
But, you know, the whole thing is, like, the fact that he'd spent, like, a cup of coffee time...
Talking to the Prime Minister.
Talking to Rishi Sunak in Northern Ireland, and is spending, like, 4 days in Southern Ireland. Yeah. The device... when he got on the plane to come over here, he said he wanted to unify and sort out the problem and get Stormont back together, working together. And the exact opposite has happened. It's proving a very, very divisive visit, I think.
Well, we'll bring you the latest when he actually comes in. When he comes in. You're listening.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Well, we're going straight back to Ireland because the President of the United States, Joe Biden, has arrived in Phoenix Park at the official residence of the Irish President, who is Michael Higgins. There is the official residence. It looks rather nice, doesn't it?
Lovely sunshine in Dublin. Yeah, absolutely.
At a blink, you might think that's the White House. But the President is there somewhere. There's an armed guard, as you'd expect. No, what I would call ordinary folk get near these events.
No, I was going to say, it looks very, very formal. You've got guards standing there, very military welcome, isn't it?
And the sun is shining, and that's quite a plus in Ireland because, of course, it rains a lot in Ireland. I would know that because I've got a lot of Irish in my blood.
But at least have you been to that park where this is?
I have been to Phoenix Park, which is why I should have known immediately where it was.
Because as far as I get, it's Temple Bar, where there's some really lovely pubs. Love Dublin.
Funny that.
OK, so what are we expecting? We've got Tom Harwood with us here. GB News Deputy Political Editor. Tom, what is he expected to do when he's there? What is he expected to say? How long is he going to be there?
Yeah, it's a significant moment, this. The two presidents of these two countries, one, of course, rather larger than the other, both in terms of stature and in terms of size of countries. Michael D. Higgins is a very diminutive little man who has recently been re-elected as president of Ireland. But this is a big state occasion for Ireland. They absolutely love this stuff when an American president comes over, and you can see the regalia and the amount of effort that has really been put into this occasion. It is going to be a big moment. Not every US president has visited the Republic of Ireland, but of course Joe Biden, as he's been saying in the last 24 hours or so, has been really quite keen to emphasise his Irish heritage and emphasise how much Ireland as a place means to him. Of course, along the course of this trip, he will be visiting his ancestral home places within Ireland, bringing his family along as well, which isn't always usual for an American president.
It does suggest, Tom, he's using this as a very nice holiday or a vacation, to use American parlance. He's brought his son
his sister.
And his sister. And he's going a romp through, as you say, all his heritage, his ancestral homes. He's going to be in County Mayo. He's going to be meeting fifth and sixth cousins. And we heard all the excitement from some of those yesterday.
Absolutely, and you might remember when Donald Trump came across to the United Kingdom, he spent a few days up on his golf course in Scotland. He got a lot of criticism for that as taking the holiday. It's interesting, we're not hearing quite the same level of criticism for Joe Biden for doing a similar thing, a family jaunt around the Republic of Ireland. But today, right now, this is the state occasion. This is the formal bit. Of course, not only is he meeting with the president, but also that address of the Irish Parliament as well as part of this visit. So the two elements of the Irish state there.
Well, how cross will they be with in the White House? A lot of the Irish papers have gone on the front page the terrible gaffe about the black and tans.
Well,
it really was a terrible gaffe.
It was a terrible gaffe, and of course, there's a lot of history there with the black and tans. There's a lot of quite sort of revolutionary songs around the black and tans. It's such a significant sort of cultural moment, something that we really would like to sort of put behind us on these islands.
100 years ago.
And particularly given what the president was saying about the dividends of peace in Northern Ireland, sort of putting behind the conflict of the last century. Bringing that up, even subliminally, even accidentally, is a really, really damaging thing.
Well, some will say he did it deliberately. He didn't. He
just
made a gaffe.
It was a Freudian slip.
But it was terrible.
What is it about US presidents and gaffes? Of the last 4 US presidents, 3 of them have been very well known for inventing words, misapplying words, or just saying the wrong thing.
It's not like that ever happens with any of our prime ministers.
Well, this president is the past master, isn't he?
Well, he's 80, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, so...
Look, he's going to run again. He's going to be around for another 4 or 5 years.
I'm sorry, he can't, surely. Right, in any case, we have to move on before he gets carried away. He always does on this one. We'll continue our coverage of Joe Biden in Ireland. That's after your morning news with Bethany Elsey.
Thank you. Here's your latest headlines from the GB newsroom at 11:32. US President Joe Biden is about to meet Ireland's President Michael D. Higgins at his official residence in Dublin. An armed guard has been set up around the building to welcome the US President. The pair will take part in a tree planting ceremony in Phoenix Park and also a ringing of the peace bell. Of course, when that meeting happens, we'll bring it to you here on GB News. President Biden will also address the Irish Parliament later and meet with Taoiseach Leo Varadkar. It's the second of a 3-day visit to the Republic of Ireland. Yesterday, thousands gathered to greet him on a tour of his ancestral homeland. Joe Biden said it felt like coming home. The Chancellor says the outlook for the UK economy is brighter than expected, despite new figures showing there was no growth in February. Data from the Office for National Statistics shows a 0.4% decrease in gross domestic product from January. The service sector fell, with the ONS blaming strike action by teachers and civil servants. A fall in gas and electric usage due to milder weather was also responsible. But the figures do show GDP grew 0.1% in the 3 months to February. Donald Trump is suing his former lawyer Michael Cohen for £400 million. The former US president is seeking damages after Cohen testified before the Manhattan grand jury that indicted him. Trump has accused Cohen of failing to honour attorney-client confidentiality and of profiting by spreading falsehoods about him. Cohen's lawyer called the lawsuit frivolous. The body of a woman has been found washed up on a beach after a search operation off Brighton Palace Pier. Coast Guard helicopters and RNLI lifeboats were involved in the rescue effort, which was launched yesterday afternoon. The heavy winds of Storm Noah had made search efforts challenging. Sussex police say an investigation is underway. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News.
Animal Rising are set to protest at the Grand National this weekend. We'll tell you why in just a minute.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. It's 11:37 and you're with To The Point on GB News.
We are going to go back to Ireland as and when the President
As and when it
pitches up,
happens,
if he knows
exciting.
where he is. But we're going to look at the papers now with political commentator. Where are you? Next to me.
Here I am.
I'm going to give you a name, Anna McGovern, and you're an academic, Joanna Williams. Sorry,
Yes,
I was going
I
to
know.
call you somebody...
That'd be nice. Thank you.
And mine's still in Ireland, obviously. We're focused on that part.
By the way, this is... No, it isn't. It's Dawn Newsom.
Uh-oh. You can call me whatever you want, big boy. I don't mind at all.
Where are we going with the first story?
Right, OK, we're going to go to... if anything happens, obviously, we'll straight back to Dublin. But at the moment, we're going to stick with you, Anna, first,
Yes.
your first story. This is Animal Rising, expecting well over 300 people to protest at the Grand National this Saturday, one of the biggest horse race meetings in the country.
50,000
people.
I know, that's going to be a huge turnout
And
for
I'm
that.
putting my £2 bet each way on whatever horse I pick. so I don't want the race to be disrupted by these people, these fanatics.
So, in front of 50,000 well-refreshed Scousers.
Yes.
Good luck.
You know, I've only heard about Animal Rising recently. I hadn't heard of them, in the last few days, I think.
They used to be Animal Rebellion.
Oh, OK, so this is a rebrand, I see.
Yeah.
But, again,
they don't want
I
to be
think...
confused with Extinction Rebellion, who
Oh,
are also
I mean,
intensely irritating.
The names, they just never run out. All these
Intensely
groups
irritating.
now for everything.
Yeah.
But I just think it's just, again, like a massive woke virtue signal from them, because at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is make a point. They're trying to disrupt, a big event that thousands of people are going to attend for something that's not going to achieve anything but massive chaos.
And look, I get sometimes, Joanna, people say the national, it's called Beaches Brook, is very high, but these people say any horse riding is cruel.
Absolutely. And
that's what they say.
They do, and in the process they're going to disrupt a day out that thousands of people are going to enjoy. And, people, it's a national institution, isn't it, the Grand National? We all like to have a flutter and enjoy it. But the fact is, if these horses were being in any way mistreated, it would be obvious to the viewing public. We would be able to see that horses, these are absolute valuable commodities as well as being living beings, and they are looked after to within an inch of their lives.
Yes,
they're so valuable. The idea that they would be mistreated, I mean, just beggars belief.
They are actually the best loved and cared for animals.
Yeah. Apart from my cats.
Apart from your cats, I'm not going down that road. It's so tempting, but I'm not going there. I think wasn't Nigel Farage, our very own Nigel Farage,
he was
doing an
talking to somebody
interview with
about
someone
this
from
last
Animal
night.
Rising. Should we have a quick look?
I'm actually really pleased that you say these horses are amazing, because they really are. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that a horse dies every other day in racing in this country. And, I think that's unacceptable.
Nathan, if it wasn't for horse racing, these horses wouldn't exist. They wouldn't actually be there. They are bred to race, and they come, as you know, from bloodlines, and they love it. They absolutely love it. They are fed the best. They've got the best vets, the best training. They have amazing lives. They love what they do. And yes, you're right. Not so much in flat racing, but in jump racing, one or two do get put down, and it's unpleasant, and it's horrible, and it's sad. But without racing, they wouldn't even be alive.
Is he related to you,
I hope
chap?
he's not.
He was a McGovern. You're a McGovern.
I am a McGovern. Maybe some, long-distant cousin. Very far distant, I hope.
I don't know where they pepper these debates with figures. Every other day a horse dies. Where's the evidence?
I have to say I'm not convinced by that. For me to question his statistics, but I haven't seen any proof of that. And
There's
I think
180 horses dying in horse racing every year. Wouldn't we know about that?
I think we would. I think this would be a much bigger news story if that was the case.
I just hope that if they are going to do this, I mean, they are saying that it's going to be a peaceful protest, despite the fact they're taking bolt cutters to get into the actual Aintree arena. But it's dangerous. I mean, these are highly trained animals.
Yeah.
They're very skittish. And if you have any anxiety with people protesting, not only will horses potentially get hurt, which is what they're protesting against, but also people might get
Dawn,
hurt
what are
as
the
well.
police going to do? Are they going to be all woke like they are with these ridiculous Extinction Rebellion protesters and
probably.
and soothe their fevered brows
join in.
and check they're OK, or are they going to shove them out the way?
Well, if they're, if you're gluing yourself to Beaches Brook, which is not a good idea, don't do that, by the way. Would you like a cup of tea? Would you like a blanket?
I know, because the police have been alarmingly weak on some of these protests.
Well, I just want everybody to have a good day and come out of it safely.
Are you having a flutter?
I hope so.
I will have a flutter, but I can't remember which horse I'm having a flutter. I normally, and this is terrible, being such a girl, I always have a bet on the horses that are wearing claret and blue, because West Ham's my football team.
But they're not doing
And they're
very
doing really well at the moment.
Even I know they're doing badly.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Will you have a flutter?
A flutter? What is that?
As a bet.
That shows you how much I know. I don't think so. Don't have plans on it currently.
Joanna?
Yes, why not?
Yeah, just do a couple of pounds.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Each
Never
way.
know, I guess.
Each way, because sometimes.
On an important note on this story, gambling raises so much money for the economy.
Yeah.
And if, as Animals Rising want to do, they want to ban horse racing, full stop, you know what happens when you ban stuff? It goes underground.
Yeah.
And how will those animals be treated then?
They will also be banning equestrianism, which we're very good at in the Olympics, show jumping, every form of sport involving horses, they would ban all of it.
Yeah, and you know what? And the important thing is bearing in mind what's happening in a couple of weeks' time with the King's coronation. Horses pulling that 4-ton gold coach.
They would ban that too.
Yeah,
so... They would ban that too. And are they, these intensely irritating people, going to now try and disrupt the coronation?
Well, let's hope not. I mean, I think Nigel Farage was absolutely right on the clip that you showed there, that these horses just simply wouldn't exist. They've been bred, they would be looked after.
Yeah,
exactly.
you know, that's the thing. I mean,
that's the sad reality.
Yeah. Joanna, let's come back to you. Right, what story would you like to... Should we, I mean, just in case Joe Biden is going to appear on our screens very soon, should we do your story from The Guardian? Which is President Biden telling peace and economic security go together in Ireland.
Yes, and he's put his money where his mouth is, you could say. He's pledged £6 billion worth of investment if the Stormont power sharing is restored. Actually, this really annoys me. I just think, who does he think he is?
Yeah.
And I know the obvious answer is the President of the United States.
I'm with you on this.
But he's interfering in our national sovereignty. I mean, this is a clear attack upon the sovereignty of Great Britain. It is not up to President Biden to come swanning in and kind of dictate terms as to what he thinks the situation
Tony Blair,
should
of whom I'm not a great fan of, but on Northern Ireland, he did great stuff with the Northern Ireland Agreement. He said in an interview the other day to Joe Biden, do not lecture and cajole the unionist community on this because it will backfire.
Absolutely.
Don't tell them what to do.
No, and he's talking about peace, but the irony is he's interfering in such a way which might have precisely the opposite effect. It seems to me that Biden is, if not anti-British, then definitely anti-Brexit, and his loathing of Brexit now is having an influence upon the way he relates to Britain as a whole. And I just think he needs to rein it in, to hark back to the previous story, and not interfere. I mean, he's seeing Britain as some kind of, third world country, to use a derogatory term that he can come across and kind of lord it over and start dictating what we should do.
He makes no secret of the fact he wants a united Ireland.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Actually, Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom.
Exactly, but that's not Biden's decision to make. That's the important point. Wherever you stand on the issue of Irish unity, it's for the people of Britain, for the people of Ireland to be making these decisions. It's not for the President of the United States. I mean, we saw it back in Brexit with Obama coming over and kind of making clear his views on Brexit.
He said we'd be at the back of the queue for everything, didn't he?
Exactly. I mean, these people need to learn that they're voted to be the President of the United States, not to be the President of the world, and definitely not to be the President of the United Kingdom.
He probably, I mean, as you would say, he probably doesn't even know where he is, Andrew. I said that before you could get that in.
And we don't know where he is because he's supposed to be with
Where is he? He's not there. I mean, we've seen lovely pictures of sun-drenched park, but it's not actually happening at the moment, is it?
But it's also a snub. I mean, the fact that he's made this fleeting visit to Northern Ireland and then goes and spends the rest of his time in Ireland. He's not coming over to the coronation. He's not coming over to kind of the island of Great Britain as such. England, Scotland and Wales.
And there's another big event to do with the 25th anniversary of the Northern Ireland Peace Agreement in a few weeks' time, and he's not coming to that either.
No.
The suggestion is because Hillary Clinton, whose husband was a huge figure in the Northern Ireland Peace deal, is going to be centre stage, and he can't bear to be upstaged by her. He should absorb her fame because she's more popular probably in America than he is.
No, absolutely. No, like I said, I really think he's overstepped the mark on this occasion.
I think it's unfortunate for the people of Northern Ireland and the island of Ireland that this has been such a divisive visit when it's meant to be doing the opposite. It really is. And, you know, you've got stories coming out, he's visiting all his cousins, he knows every single fifth cousin by name, who doesn't? But this is one of my favourite quotes about his family, with his Auntie Bertie told him, your father wasn't a bad man, just an Englishman.
Yes.
So when we're concentrating on stories like that, rather than the Northern Ireland Peace Protocol and actually getting Stormont back up and running.
And I don't think he's popped over to see his father's English heritage, has he?
No. I mean, the implication is that a lot of this is for how it plays out with an American audience.
Yeah. And is it 30 to 40 million Irish Catholics who vote in the presidential election?
But again, I really resent the idea that citizens of Great Britain and Northern Ireland become the political pawns of Biden's election campaign.
He's going to run again to be president. What do you think about that?
Oh, God, I couldn't think of anything worse. And I think many people are really coming to that opinion because it's like he's not even there. He doesn't know where he is half the time.
And the thing is, you know, if he's 80 now, and he's not a young 80, is
No.
he? That's
No.
the point. He's an old
Yes.
80. And
Yeah.
I'm no fan of Trump's, but Trump at 77 seems 15 years younger than Biden.
No, absolutely. But it also makes me think that this is why the Democrats are very keen to have Trump standing as the Republican candidate, because I think the optics of Biden v. Trump, two old men, essentially, would play a lot better than if it was someone like Ron DeSantis, who's so much younger. I mean, that would really show Biden up for the doddery old man.
It's quite astonishing, isn't it? I mean, politics is a basket case in many countries around the world at the moment. I mean, our very own included. But it's like, what's the population of America?
330 million.
And we're down to these two men?
Yep. And we could be down to them again.
What a depressing thought.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Just like, really?
Cheer us up. What else is there?
Yeah, we've got a fun story.
Oh,
What else?
we'll try. So we're going to cover, I think, the NPR with Elon, so the National Public Radio. So they boycotted Twitter, essentially, because they've been labelled by the platform as state-affiliated media. So now all 53 of their accounts, they've just stopped posting entirely. But they do get funding from the federal government, even though it is minimal. So actually, the state-affiliated media label does actually apply to them because they do get that federal funding. But then they came back and said, oh no, you know, we don't think that this represents us. And then Elon Musk actually corrected it, but they're still boycotting it. So I think for them it's just an excuse to call out Twitter because they don't agree with Elon Musk in itself. But then what was really interesting, I think, was when I don't know if those of you at home might have seen Elon Musk doing the interview with the BBC journalist.
This is a great story.
Wow. Yes. Oh dear, is all I can say. The BBC were completely stumped. That was embarrassing.
This is just to fill people in the background. This is their the BBC journalist who got an exclusive sit-down chat with Elon Musk. Incredibly rare thing to do.
Yep.
He had a good few hours to prepare to it, so turned up to do this interview, right? And you would prepare. I mean, we would prepare. You'd make a few notes, possibly.
I think the most significant part of it was when the BBC journalist said, "Oh, Twitter has a lot of hateful content," and then Elon Musk challenged him. I said, "Okay, well, what is the hateful content?" And then he's like, "Well, I can't name any examples."
He was gibbering.
He was literally just stumbling over himself. And Elon Musk was like, "Well, come on, one example. Just give me one." And they were like, "I can't." And it just looked very embarrassing.
Very interesting. The BBC put out various takes from the interview, but they omitted that bit.
Yeah, I can imagine why.
And it was humiliating. Honestly, I mean, it's
But lots of people have put it on Twitter, funnily enough.
They have.
Good.
He could have, I mean, Joanna, he could have literally, I mean, the BBC reporter literally picked on any subject from sort of like, you know, women's rights, racism, anything. And he would have had a point about Twitter being a bit of a cesspit occasionally with hate speech.
He could have referred that BBC reporter to the amount of racist abuse Diane Abbott, the Labour MP, gets on Twitter on an hourly basis, more probably than any other politician in Britain.
I think it really exposed the BBC in this interview of James Clayton. And the thing it exposed for me was that if you are woke, if you think that you have all the right opinions, then the assumption is you don't actually need to do your research. You don't need to put the hours in actually reading up and thinking carefully about what you want to ask and the points you want to make. Just because you're right, you're automatically right. And I think that's the assumption that these people carry into these interviews. And he was really hoisted by his own petard on this occasion. And it was a joy to see.
It was toe-curlingly embarrassing.
It was. It really
was. If I was a judge, you just wouldn't know.
It was just too painful to even watch.
I sort of quite enjoyed it because I thought, you fool.
Yeah.
You fool. You've got one of the most famous, the richest men, most powerful men in the world, and here you haven't done your basic
And so rare to get a sit-down chat. And, you know, the journalist concerned, I mean, you know, we've done this all our lives, and that's a long time between us, about 300 years. But you would actually... He said, well, I didn't have much time to prepare.
No.
He had, like, 4 hours.
Come on.
And you would have had access to a whole team of people to help.
Yes, he works for the BBC, 22,000 employees.
I mean, there would have been so many resources that could have been thrown at that if any of them had just thought to ask the right question. But like I say, there's this presumption that if you're morally right and politically correct, you don't actually need evidence. You don't need to back up your arguments.
I wonder if he's been rebuked.
Well, I hope so.
Mr.
Well,
Coates.
I mean,
Still got a job.
I think he's probably taken some credit for it on social media, I think. But I can imagine he's been under fire for that. I just thought the whole thing was just incredibly embarrassing for him.
Yeah.
I think they're just trying to make it look even slightly an achievement that we got, like, one of the most powerful men. But no, I don't think so.
Right.
Talking of powerful men, Tom Harwood is still with us, actually gazing at your screen now. We're seeing pictures from Dublin at the moment. We are still waiting for President Biden to arrive.
Beautiful Phoenix Park, and I think you can tell us a few facts and figures about Phoenix Park.
Like, I actually visited Phoenix Park just a few months ago. It is, in fact, one of the largest parks in Europe. It's a beautiful, big park, and in the middle of it, there is an obelisk, the largest obelisk in Europe, dedicated to the Duke of Wellington. And it was constructed after the Duke of Wellington won the Battle of Waterloo in, what was it, 1812? 1815. There we go.
Remember it well, don't you?
There's a zoo in the park. There's all sorts of... And it does sort of dominate... When you get up to any tall building in Dublin, you can look out on this park, and it is vast. And, of course, is the home of the Irish president as well.
And the official residence is pretty magnificent.
It is. It's like its very own White House.
I challenge you to give me the Gaelic pronunciation of that official residence. I will. If you can't, because I can't.
I will not even attempt for fear of.
Look, he's still not there, and we've come to the end of our show for this week. Coming up next is GB News Live with Mark Longhurst, and he'll continue coverage of Joe Biden in Ireland. Thank you for watching. He's Andrew Pearce. I'm Dawn Newsom, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Hello there, welcome to your Thursday weather update from the Met Office. I'm Claire Nazir. Still showery out there, some sunshine coming through. We've lost the sting in the wind, which is good news, but still fresh. Low pressure sinking down towards the Low Countries. You can see this area of cloud and rain waiting in the wings. That will bring some wet weather across to more southern parts on Friday. Before that, though, low pressure firmly in charge, and that means more showers. Some dry weather across central parts of England and Wales, but further north, always a swathe of clouds, showery bursts of rain, which could turn heavy. Later then, we'll see more cloud just encroaching across the southwest. But before that, some dry weather to end the day, as temperatures climb to around 10 to 14 degrees Celsius, so slightly higher than yesterday. Now, through Thursday evening and overnight, that shower rain continues across the north as well as the east. You can see some clearer skies where we could see a touch of frost before thickening cloud brings some outbreaks of rain towards the West Country through the early hours of the morning. It is going to be a cold night away from the southwest where it will be wet, but showers will continue across the far north of Scotland. And here we'll see temperatures holding around 4 degrees Celsius, picking up again as we head into tomorrow morning once the sun gets to work. First thing then on Friday morning, this rain skirts central southern parts of England and Wales, lingering towards the east. Showers develop inland. They'll develop readily tomorrow. They're likely to be heavy with the risk of thunder. You can see some intense bursts, particularly across the eastern side of the country. Brighter weather to end the day, this time across the western side of Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. And temperatures here 12 or 13 degrees Celsius. Here's your outlook through Saturday. Some showery bursts yet again towards the east. Dry skies elsewhere after a bit of a frosty start, but at least though you'll see some sunshine and a light wind. Temperatures though through the next few days are slowly rising. It is going to feel warmer. There will be some sunshine in the mix, but always more cloud